Today is the end of season 4. Honestly, I think this season changed me more than I was prepared for. If you're new here, maybe you found the adrenaline clips first, the motorcycles, the talking heads, the spectators watch and operators build speeches. Maybe you found the show through one of the guests. But behind all of that, behind the edits, behind the uploads, behind the branding, and behind the algorithms, and behind the image, there's just me. One woman trying to build something real while simultaneously rebuilding herself in public. And that sounds exciting until you actually live it. Because this entire show and this entire brand was not built from comfort. It was built from survival mode. And survival mode has been part of my life for a very long time. I know what instability looks like and what it feels like. And I know what uncertainty feels like. And I know what it feels like to grow up in foster care, wondering where emotional safety actually exists. And when you grow up like that, you become hyper aware of everything. You study tone, you study moods, you study patterns, and you study energy shifts. And you learn how to emotionally brace yourself before life even takes a swing at you. You learn how to survive before you ever learn how to rest. And eventually, it becomes your identity because survival mode stops feeling temporary. So even now, years later, as an adult, building a podcast, building a YouTube channel, building systems, building a future, sometimes my nervous system still acts like danger is waiting around every corner. And I think season 4 exposed that inside of me hard. Because people see the content, but they don't see the cost. They don't see the nights that I barely sleep. They don't see me editing clips while emotionally exhausted. They don't see the pressure of trying to build publicly while your entire identity is evolving in real time. They don't see the moments that I stare at the screen wondering if any of this is actually working. They just see the upload. And this season carried a lot behind those uploads. This season carried Las Vegas. And Vegas hit me differently than I expected it to. Some places don't just hold memories. They hold versions that still linger in familiar streets, old emotions, late night thoughts, and pieces of yourself you thought you already made peace with. And while I was there, I stayed in this Airbnb that strangely felt more like home than I expected it. And when your nervous system has been running hot for years, you notice things like that. You notice the quiet. You notice the stillness. And you notice what it feels like to finally exhale for a minute. And I think that trip forced me to realize just how exhausting it actually was. Because while I was there, my mom was in a nursing home. She still is. And no matter how old you become, and no matter how strong you become, there is something about seeing your parent vulnerable that cracks you open in places you didn't know were still very fragile. Because when you're a kid, your parents feel permanent, even when life is messy, even when things are complicated, and even when there's pain attached to the story. They still feel permanent. And sitting there with my mom this season, it hit me hard. Harder than I expected. Because for all the operator talk, for all the systems, and for all the branding and the uploads, I was still just somebody sitting there realizing that time keeps moving, whether we emotionally are ready or not. And I carried that feeling the entire drive home. The memories, the pressure, the emotional weight of everything that I had been carrying. And there were moments on that drive where I honestly felt disassociated. Like my mind was still trying to catch up to everything that my heart had already walked through. And then Strawberry Road appeared. And maybe nobody listening understands why that mattered to me, but I did. It felt symbolic, like life quietly placing a marker in the dirt, saying, you survived another version of yourself. And if certain frequencies were ever real, they already know what I mean. But I learned something important this season. I'm not chasing echoes anymore, not ghosts, not silence, and not unfinished emotional contracts. If something real ever needed to cross the distance, it knows where. But I won't walk backwards anymore, trying to prove loyalty to silence. That version of me is over. And maybe that line was only meant for one person. But this season also forced me to confront another truth. Sometimes the past wants to drag you back down with it. And I felt that this season. Old energies, old emotional patterns, old versions of myself, trying to reclaim space in my life. I had a conversation recently with somebody from my past that honestly shook me afterwards. Not because I'm weak, but because when you spend your life trying to rebuild yourself, it hurts watching people you care about still drowning in darkness that they never escaped. I realized something after that call. I cannot carry everybody. I cannot save everyone. And I cannot let the past keep demanding access to the version of me that almost drowned there too. Because who I used to be is not who I am anymore. And sometimes people become uncomfortable when you evolve beyond the version of yourself that they remembered. The season also taught me painful lessons about business, about boundaries, about what happens when you build publicly. Because I helped somebody this season. I gave strategy, systems, energy, creative direction, time. And somewhere along the line, I realized not everybody admires your blueprint with clean intentions. Some people study your fire while quietly trying to borrow your identity. And that situation hurt me more than I expected. Because my instinct is still to overgive, to help, to pour, to believe in people. But being heart-led without structure will destroy you in business. And I had to learn that lesson publicly. And that's the part that nobody tells creators. When you build publicly, your evolution becomes public too. Your mistakes become public, and your exhaustion becomes public. And your reinventions, they become public too. People watch you become somebody else in real time, and that pressure is real. Especially when the flywheel starts moving. Because 6 months ago, this wasn't my reality. The YouTube channel was smaller, the podcast was smaller, and the systems, well, they were smaller too. And my confidence was smaller. And now the clips circulate. audience grows and the views keep climbing. The guests keep arriving with stories that honestly move me and inspire me more than they even know. Because hearing people speak honestly about survival, about trauma, about recovery, and about rebuilding themselves, it reminded me that everybody is carrying invisible weight. Everybody. And somewhere along the way, this podcast stopped becoming content. This became a place where people could stop pretending for an hour. And honestly, I needed that too. Because some nights I feel powerful. Some nights I feel driven. And some nights, I still feel like the foster kid, trying to prove she deserves a place in the world. That's the truth. But what's also true is this. I am not the same woman who started this journey. I see the growth now. I hear it in my voice. I see it in my systems. And I see it in the consistency. I see it in the discipline. And I see it in the audience. Even with all of the emotional chaos this season carried, I kept building. Hell, I came home from Vegas after that long drive, and the very next day I was back in the studio recording again with guests. Not because I had it all together, but because somewhere inside me there's still that survival instinct saying, keep moving. But I'm learning now that survival and living are not the same thing. And maybe that's the real lesson of season 4. Humanity. Because underneath every brand, every upload, every guest, and every creator, there's just a human being trying to figure life out in real time. So tonight closes season 4. And I think this season will always be remembered as the season where the mask cracked. And the season where the human underneath the brand became visible. The season where I stopped romanticizing the past long enough to finally start building a future. In season 5 is different. It's sharper. It's more intentional. It's more disciplined. And it's less survival mode. More sovereignty. And more peace. And more structure. And if this episode spoke to something inside of you, if you've been rebuilding too, if you've been carrying invisible weight too, if you've been trying to become someone your past no longer recognizes, subscribe to the channel, follow the show, and if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, leave a review. Because every review, every comment, every subscription, it helps this story reach somebody else sitting alone, trying to survive their own rebuild. And honestly, that matters more to me than pretending this is just content. This is Soul Plus Systems. And remember, spectators watch, and operators, we build.